Let's go gambling! Aw, dang it. Aw, dang it.
He wins $50,000 in 10 minutes and instantly loses it all. In front of thousands of viewers, he demolishes his room, curses at his own mother, and begs his juicers, as he calls his donators, for money to play again. Seemingly tragic, but for some highly entertaining, a gambler, drug addict, scandal magnate, but also a man who could have had a completely different life. Who exactly is Bossman Jack, the streamer who turned addiction into a strange kind of a show? Are we merely witnessing his life self-destruction, or are we somehow complicit in this tragedy? Enjoy the video. Don't forget to subscribe this channel, give this video a like and leave the comment under. Thanks. Traditional gambling is extremely difficult. First of all, you gotta walk somewhere, just basically physically appear somewhere, deposit your money, and to make matters worse, you may live in a country where gambling is extremely illegal, or at least heavily restricted and taxed. Online casinos come to the rescue, operating from jurisdictions that barely acknowledge taxes. Transactions are handled entirely through cryptocurrencies, though minimizing any potential legal tax or regulatory issues. These casinos also offer partial anonymity to users who are of course assumed to be residing in places where online gambling is legal. Moreover, online casinos keep you glued to the screen, and now nothing distracts you except your account balance. Games become more colorful by the day, and your next win is just one click away. Trust me, bro. And when that win happens, your balance instantly increases. Online casinos are just regular casinos on steroids. The result? A rapid increase in the popularity of crypto casinos. And it only takes one unfortunate coincidence for someone to end up on such a platform and, with no self-control, lose it all. This is exactly what happened to Bossman Jack, whose gambling and risk-taking tendencies were cultivated long before he ever touched an online casino. Bossman Jack, mockingly referred to by some as Deadman Jack, is actually a man named Austin Curtis Peterson. He was born on April 17, 1995 in Williamsburg, Virginia, USA. He has two loving parents, Diana and Scott Peterson, who, despite all of his problems, have tried from the very beginning to accept both him and his behavior, offering him a roof over his head and warm food to eat. It's known that his family is religious, and they often referred to Christian values. To be completely honest, they seem, at least on the surface, like a good, decent family, or at least one that should have provided a solid foundation for him to make something of himself. A perfect example of that is his older brother Andrew, who lives a completely different kind of life. He finished school, has a wife, works at an insurance company, and plays in a band in his free time. But now let's come back to Austin himself, whom I'm portraying here as some kind of an enigma, even though up to this point you only know that he burns through money at the speed of light. So let's dig deeper into his story. Austin had problems from a very young age. The first case where he broke the law took place in 2013 when he tried to buy alcohol despite being underage. And while that seems like a minor offense, well, it was only the beginning. The most serious incident occurred a year later in 2014 when Austin, along with two of his friends, committed a series of break-ins involving more than a dozen cars. They stole various valuables from the vehicles. So Austin was charged with several crimes, including multiple counts of burglary, theft, and tampering with vehicles. Initially, he faced a lengthy prison sentence, but he ultimately received probation and was ordered to pay a little over $3,000 in restitution to the victims. According to publicly available records, his avoidance of more serious consequences, especially charges that would have been classified as felonies, may have been due to the fact that Austin cooperated with law enforcement. In other words, he snitched. That episode of his life ended with less than a month in jail, a fine, a restitution order, and a 10-year probation period, lasting until 2025, which is really important, crucial to note, so keep that in mind. And that, for for a brief time marked the end of the most serious chapter of his criminal life. But that was by no means the end of his problems, though the rest of his transgressions would occur during his streaming career. Austin Peterson first began streaming in 2019 on Twitch, initially under the nickname Austin07. At the time, he mainly focused on broadcasting gameplay from old-school Runescape, a popular MMORPG designed to mimic the mechanics and style of the game's 2007 version. RuneScape then already had its darker gambling-oriented side, namely the infamous Duel Arena, which players nicknamed the Sand Casino. In that space, players would fight each other while wagering virtual gold. The arena was particularly attractive to individuals with a tendency toward gambling, including, of course, Austin himself, who quickly realized that gambling, even in virtual form, can be incredibly addictive. Shortly after beginning his streaming career, Austin gained a reputation as what's known as a debt streamer, a person who constantly borrows money from their viewers. This system was both simple and brutal. Austin would regularly borrow huge amounts of in-game gold from viewers and other players, which he would then wager in fights. After each loss, and he lost often, he would be left with debts that he tried to repay by borrowing even more from others. The debt spiral grew rapidly, creating a virtual trap that had very real consequences in his life. At one point, his debt reached the equivalent of $6,000 when converted from virtual gold to real-world money. Austin's streams turned into intense performances where he publicly begged viewers for loans, often with desperation and theatrical drama, which in turn only attracted more viewers eager to witness his ongoing collapse and downfall. Austin crossed another line when at a certain point, likely related to his growing substance abuse, he began selling RuneScape gold borrowed from other users and his own fans in exchange for real money. In one case, he received just about $50 for a batch of gold. It might not seem like much, but when you're an addict, you don't care whether it's a lot or a little. What matters is that you have money to buy something to take the edge off. Even during the RuneScape era, Austin was already showing troubling signs. He streamed through entire nights, falling into obsessive states, which he would openly talk about. After one multi-day RuneScape marathon, he claimed, allegedly while completely sober, to have even experienced hallucinations. When Twitch finally banned gambling streams in October of 2022, Austin effectively lost his main source of income. As a result, on March 31st, 2023, he decided to move over to the Kick platform where gambling streams were allowed. And that's when he fully let loose. Austin07 transformed into the now infamous Bossman Jack, openly streaming his gambling and online casino content without any hesitation whatsoever. You see, Kick, the streaming platform, is by design tied to stake online casino. And that's basically why Kick has an interest in allowing gambling online streams and even promoting them on their site. It generates a lot of viewer engagement, and often those viewers go on for themselves to play a little bit of online casino. Thus, it brings more profit to, for example, stake. On March 31st, 2023, he officially launched his new channel on Kick, and from his very first streams, it was clear that there, Bossman Jack would adopt a much more aggressive and direct streaming style. The freedom that Kick offered allowed him to behave in far more extreme ways than Twitch ever permitted, which quickly attracted both his old audience and a wave of new viewers drawn in by the intense, often scandalous spectacle. Live streaming online casinos turned out to be beneficial for him in its own twisted way, because along the way he signed multiple sponsorship deals with online casinos. They paid him to gamble on their site. In the meantime, however, Austin began attracting more and more viewers, people who were either fascinated by him or in some cases just as addicted to gambling as he was. This truly emotional roller coaster that he offered on a near daily basis made for a compelling content. He could win huge amounts of money in mere minutes, only to lose it all even faster. Naturally, this led to dramatic and explosive reactions. There's even an entire series of videos on YouTube, clips from his streams, where you can watch him win almost $200,000, and then you might experience how he lost it all within just few days. He managed to burn through $50,000 in just 60 seconds. During these intense episodes, Austin would act out in an incredibly toxic way. He destroyed his equipment, wrecked his room, broke down doors and other furniture in his room, and also he was insulting viewers and cursing at his own family. And yet he kept begging for more donations just so he could keep playing. His relationship with his sponsor was also quite rocky. On one hand, he had several sponsorships, but then he would turn around and publicly insult his own sponsors, claiming the games on their casinos were rigged and fraudulent. In one particularly outrageous case, he received some funds from his sponsor to gamble away on their platform, but he just withdrew them and gambled it all away on their competitor's site. He literally lost his sponsor's money on a rival casino. Wow. It's worth noting here that Bossman Jack didn't rely solely on sponsorships for income while streaming on Kick. A significant portion of his earnings came from viewers' donations, which he often referred to as coming from his juicers, quite literally squeezing money out of them. Austin would regularly beg for money, frequently resorting to absurd stunts like shaving his own head live in exchange for a specific donation amount. Sometimes his viewers, often trolling him, would promise large donations that they never actually sent, which only added to his growing frustration. Even on Kick's streaming platform, Austin was constantly on thin ice. On one hand, he brought in viewers' attention and engagement, but on the other one, his deeply problematic behavior was really difficult to tolerate, even for Kick's notoriously lax moderation. After losing big, Austin would often hit himself on stream, use offensive and homophobic slurs, or accuse other streamers of cheating and unethical conduct, despite being far from innocent himself. Further problems for Austin Peterson were directly tied to his increasing addiction, not just to gambling, but also to psychoactive substances. He spoke openly about his love for substance abuse and sometimes even revealed details that could have endangered his suppliers. His own moderators even suggested that Austin ask them to order various substances for him. And now we're returning to the starting point. Because all of these problems just kept piling up. And all of this could only end in one way, with yet another arrest of Austin Peterson, of course. His latest legal troubles emerged once again in mid-2024 when the police arrested him on charges that primarily included assaulting a family member and the possession of highly controlled and dangerous substances under the US legal system. But that wasn't all. The situation became even more complicated because he was arrested while still serving a probation sentence from his earlier wrongdoings, the ones I mentioned at the beginning. That, of course, made things significantly worse. But this time, his savior came in a form of none other than his own father. Though Austin was facing several years behind bars, thanks mainly to his father's efforts, he secured a remarkably favorable deal with the court. During the hearing, Austin pleaded guilty to possession of controlled substances and violating the terms of his probation. He was convicted, but the judge handed down a 3-year prison sentence suspended for a new 5-year probation period. This means Austin won't actually have to go to prison as long as he complies with the terms of his probation for the next 5 years. In short, his original probation was voided, and he was given another shot, an entirely new 5-year probation period. Thanks to his father's intervention, Bossman Jack was released almost immediately after spending just a few days in jail, despite facing the possibility of years behind bars. However, Austin had to fulfill a few conditions. Bail was set at $1,000 and his early release was contingent on his participation in a 30-day rehabilitation program for substance and alcohol abuse. As soon as Bossman Jack left jail, he returned to his parents' house and immediately launched a live stream to inform his community about the details of his release. He showed viewers his room, proudly pointing out his new computer setup and a new door installed, replacing his old door that he had previously destroyed. That very same day, he began preparing for rehab. Austin was therefore sent to rehab center he had been to before. The treatment program usually lasts 30 days, but from the very beginning, Austin announced that he would be allowed to have his phone on weekends, and he would be able to even conduct short real-life streams. He described the facility in a positive light, saying it offered good conditions. Well, and now everything is only in his hands. Bossman Jack currently continues gambling streams online, but this time with yet another chance to do better. But will he succeed? Will the right people guide him toward more successful path? Only time will tell, but it doesn't look great for now. This video is already pretty outdated, and based on the news from 2 days ago, news from the YouTuber PickleTime, who often reports on Austin, Bossman Jack will probably spend the coming 6 months in another rehab session. So yeah, good luck with that. Take care on the internet. Thanks for watching.